When I was around 8, I was really into Percy Jackson, and throughout the novels, it constantly talks about old Greek heroes like Odysseus and Hercules, and so many more. Eventually, I learned about the story of Oedipus, and for some reason, he wasn't talked about at all in the Percy Jackson series, and I don't really know why. It's a really wholesome story, and I just think that not mentioning it is a major missed opportunity. It starts out with this guy named Laius. He's a prince, and his father dies, and he's too young to be the heir to the throne, so he gets exiled by the usurpers, and they take the throne. But fortunately for him, he gets adopted by the royal family of Peloponnesus. So he was lucky enough to grow up in a loving, caring, and very rich home, and eventually he decided to rape his 5-year-old brother. After a while, it kinda got boring, so he wanted to spice it up. And after a lot of indecisiveness, he decided to kill his brother, do a little necrophilia. During the rape, Laius called his 5-year-old brother a poopy face. The gods were completely fine with him just raping his 5-year-old brother. They do that kind of stuff all the time. I mean, who can't resist that divine 2-inch pee-pee? But calling your host a poopy face, that is just off limits. That violates every sacred rule and law that there ever has been. So, Zeus cursed Laius, and thus,
all of his descendants would bear a terrible fate.
Because of the guilt of calling his host a poopy face, he ran back to his homeland of Thebes. On his way back to Thebes, he consulted the Oracle of Delphi to see what the curses meant. Laius was told that his own son would kill him and sleep with Laius's baby mama. When he returned to Thebes, both of the usurpers were vanquished, so he was welcomed back as a king and given a wife. They didn't have sex though, because Laius was scared of the prophecy coming true. But he got drunk, so his wife Jocasta got pregnant. When his beautiful baby boy was born, he put metal poles in both of his son's ankles and then gave him to a herdsman to put in the wild so that he would die on his own. But the herdsman wasn't a heartless piece of crap and had more love for this baby than the father, so he passed him around to a bunch of merchants until he got to Corinth. Again, a child was taken in by the royal family themselves. Because of his damaged feet, his new parents called him Oedipus. That literally translates to damaged feet. How uncreative could you possibly be to name your son with metal spikes in his ankles, damaged feet? Are you kidding me? You couldn't think of maybe Benjamin or Edward or an actual fucking name? No, you call your child damaged feet. So yeah, Oedipus just grows up not knowing that he's adopted, or that there's a prophecy where he's literally going to sleep with his mom, just blissfully unaware. But eventually some old lady gets drunk and spills the beans, and now Oedipus knows that he's gonna kill his dad and frick his mom, so he runs away to avoid this horrendous tragedy. Oedipus is just following the yellow brick road, and eventually he runs into someone going the opposite way on a narrow cliff. This guy had a lot of horses and a lot of other stuff, so they couldn't just pass each other at the same time. And instead of letting Oedipus pass, he tries to push Oedipus off of a cliff. So this asshole just tried to kill Oedipus because he thinks that he's more important and that because he's in a hurry, he needs to go first. In self-defense, Oedipus just fucking yeets him. He kills him. Eventually, he makes his way to Thebes, but there's this terrible plague that's caused by this darn Sphinx. So basically, this Sphinx, right, it's a major butthole. For absolutely no reason, it's killing thousands of people until some nerd can solve its dumb riddle that literally everyone has heard before. And whoever can solve this impossible riddle gets the queen's hand in marriage because, the king went missing 3 weeks ago to find help. So this city, with thousands of people, not a single person has been able to solve it in literal months. This might make you think that the riddle is incredibly difficult. It must be impossible. Alright, let's see if you can solve it. What walks on 4 legs, then walks on 2 legs, then walks on 3 legs? You got this. You can do it. Time's almost up. Obviously, as we all know, the answer is a human. Oedipus is also a bit of a moron. He says man, but I don't think women were invented yet, so maybe he was right, I'm not sure. If by any chance you have not heard of the riddle and in fact are Patrick Star, a baby crawls on all fours, adults walk, and old people need a cane. Anyways, not only is that not even that hard of a riddle where a 7-year-old could figure that out in maybe 5 minutes, but literally everyone has heard of that riddle! Unless you are Patrick Star and live under a freaking rock, you have heard of that riddle. So Oedipus, being a grown-ass man, figures out the riddle with ease, saves the city, and these morons treat him like a hero, and he gets this beautiful queen's hand in marriage. A real milk. So Jocasta and Oedipus have 4 very not screwed up children and live happily ever after. Except the gods aren't very happy with these results and curse the town with another plague. Unfortunately for the townspeople, nobody can figure out why. It's not like there's some stupid things that has a riddle that anyone can solve. So everybody has a heartfelt get-together, and they realize that, oopsies, Oedipus is not only Jocasta's husband, but also her son. Understandably, Queen Jocasta, after realizing that her children are also her grandchildren, she kills herself. Oedipus, also not being very happy that he's been fricking his mom, instead of killing himself, he decides to get a little creative. He goes to his mother's dead corpse and decides that he doesn't want to kill himself. No, he wants to blind himself with her buttons. After blinding himself, he gets his oldest child, Antigone, and they basically just leave the city. She's basically a caregiver because they didn't have service dogs back then. Now that Oedipus is gone, there are 3 possible rulers. There's Ismene, Eteocles, and Polynices. Ismene is the oldest, but she's a woman, so obviously she's not going to get the throne. Eteocles and Polynices are really close, so they decide to just share the throne. 1 year, Eteocles would have it, and then the next year, Polynices would have the throne. It's perfect. It's infallible. Nothing could go wrong. One might say they could just share the throne like the consulship in the Roman Republic, but obviously they didn't think of that because they're literally inbred. And, unsurprisingly, when Eteocles' year is up and it's Polynices' turn to rule, he decides that he actually wants to keep the power and keep the throne. Polynices is kind of pissed about this, so he decides to start a war against Eteocles. While the war was raging on, Ismene decided to venture out and try to find Antigone and Oedipus. When Ismene found Oedipus, she asked him to come back to Thebes so that he could stop his sons from fighting. Oedipus didn't want anything to do with that, so he just told Ismene to frick off. On the other hand, Antigone thought she could save her brothers, so she returned back to Thebes with Ismene. When Ismene and Antigone returned to Thebes, they found out that after killing most of the male population of Thebes, Polynices and Eteocles decided to 1v1, have a duel. They learned that eventually Polynices got stabbed, but when Eteocles turned around to celebrate winning the duel, with his last breath, Polynices managed to shank Eteocles right in the back. Since Jocasta's brother Creon was the king after the usurpers were killed, but before Laius returned, he took the throne. Since Eteocles had made Creon his right-hand man during his rule, he gave Eteocles a proper burial, but not Polynices. Antigone was horrified, not because her brothers killed each other, that's par for the course in Greek politics, but because Polynices didn't get a proper burial. If Polynices didn't get a proper burial, he could never join the afterlife. Creon saw Polynices as a traitor, so he forbade anyone from giving him a proper burial. Antigone didn't really care though, so she asked Ismene if she would help her bury Polynices. Ismene was a massive pussy, so she left Antigone to bury Polynices on her own. After looking at way too many corpses, Antigone found Polynices' dead body. She managed to do the proper funeral rites, but right as she finished, a guard caught her. She was brought to Creon, and Creon, being a great uncle, locked her into a cave with no food, light, or water. Antigone eventually withered away and died of dehydration, but since Creon's son Haman had a massive crush on Antigone, he decided that life wasn't worth living anymore and killed himself too. Haman was a bit of a mommy's boy, so his mother Eurydice also killed herself despite having 4 other children. And that's where our story ends. See? Told you it was wholesome.